Years ago, I was so lonely and I called on to this creature and it came and it slept with me and now I'm his. And he's like, oh, girl, don't say that. Hi, comrades. Happy Thursday. Today, wanted to talk about the new Nosferatu movie that just came out yesterday. I watched the movie in theaters yesterday and I have many, many thoughts that I just want to discuss because the movie was weird, okay? It was definitely an interesting way to spend Christmas Day overall. At the end of the movie, a lot of people were saying, wow, Merry Christmas, everybody. The vibes were vibing. I want to preface this video that I'm probably going to be talking about spoilers. I learned that I'm not very good at recapping movies, so I just kind of want to rant and talk about what I think about the movie. If you don't know what Nosferatu is or what it means, essentially it's a movie that came out in like 1923 or something. It's a ripoff of Dracula, except that the vampire is like much scarier and he looks kind of weird. The vampire's name is Count Orlok. Nosferatu means vampire or the distinguished one or something like that in Romanian. It has Romanian origins, the name Nosferatu, but essentially it just means like vampire. It's instead of saying vampire, they say he's Nosferatu in the movie. Love the cast. I love Lily Rose Depp. She looked so good. Every time she was on screen, she was captivating. The way she showed her emotions, her boobs also looked great. Like, you know what I mean? Lily's character, her name is Ellen in the movie, and she's like pretty much the main character of the entire movie. I'm gonna try to like recap the movie, except it's not gonna be in the way that the movie's shown. It's like in the timeline. So there's this girl, Ellen. She's very lonely. She calls on to something. That something comes, sleeps with her, and marks her as his own. Movie, it said years later. And then literally like 30 seconds after, it told us it was 1878 or something. So I wasn't sure why they couldn't just tell us the years, but whatever. So our girl, Ellen, she's married to this guy named Thomas. Ellen has weird dreams about what has happened before. Thomas is like, hey, like, it's fiction, like, don't worry about it. Thomas is like, hey, by the way, I have this interview that I have to go to, and in order for me to get the position, I have to take these papers to another country, to this count named Orlok, so he can sign it and get an apartment in our city. Turns out that the guy that he was working for was already working with Nosferatu, but Thomas obviously doesn't know that. His journey to the castle is obviously weird. The way it's shot is like very it kind of gives you motion sickness in a way. He kept passing out, waking up in random places, and then he finally makes it to the castle. He meets Nosferatu, who's played by the guy that played the clown in It, Bill Sagard or something like that. Also a very good actor in this movie. The way that he played Nosferatu, it was freaking terrifying. The way his hands looked, the way you can't even recognize the actor, and my favorite thing about the vampire was the fact that he was Romanian, obviously, and he had a freaking mustache the entire movie. Like a thick mustache. He keeps passing out. Count Orlok is freaking weird. He keeps waking up with like bites on his chest. He's like, something's weird going on. And then when Count Orlok is essentially done with him because he wasn't letting him leave, there's like dogs that come into his room or something, or wolves, and Thomas jumps out of the window in the castle and he ends up at some kind of monastery. Meanwhile, Ellen, his wife, is staying with her friend and her family, and she's experiencing like epileptic seizures, I guess, at night, and she keeps talking about this guy that's coming to her. She keeps having these like attacks or whatever. So the family finds a doctor. The doctor's like, hey, I don't really know what's going on, but I do know a professor who might know what's going on because he like knows all the magic stuff. Professor is played by William Dafoe. Also an amazing freaking actor. He comes, he sees her, he's like, oh yeah, this girl, she's got something in her, okay? Like a demon or something. Then we go back to our Thomas. He ends up at like a monastery with a bunch of nuns that are trying to heal him. And he's like, I gotta go. They're like, you're not healed yet. He took a horse, he ran away. The entire time while Ellen is having her seizures or whatever, the family that she's with, they're like, oh, like she just misses her husband needs to come. Her husband Thomas comes back, and now he's sick. He's experiencing like similar vibes of whatever the frick his wife was experiencing. All of a sudden, Ellen is like, hey, by the way, I haven't told you this. We already know that. I haven't told you this, but years ago, I was so lonely and I called on to this creature and it came and it slept with me and now I'm his. And he's like, oh girl, don't say that. And she's like, well, whoopsie. Ellen finally talks to the magician guy, played by William Dafoe / doctor / professor. Professor's like, oh yeah, I know what's going on. Nosferatu's coming here. Meanwhile, Nosferatu puts himself in a casket because he has to sleep there every single night and gets mailed on the ship because he has a new property he's going to. So Nosferatu comes to the city. He visits Ellen at night. He's like, you have 3 days because you are mine and you need to tell me that you are mine. Like, you need to agree and we need to be together. And she's like, I can't do that. Like, I have a husband. And he's like, well, if you don't do that, everybody's going to die and your husband's going to die. And she's like, oh, frick. Nosferatu also visits her friend that she was staying with at night. And the friend starts experiencing epileptic seizures as well. Or, like, the moments where she's, like, acting possessed. The dad that she was staying with, her friend's husband, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, by the way, he's like, you guys need to GTFO from my house, please, because you are bringing some kind of disease into my house. And she's like, dude, if we leave, you all die. But he still kicks them out. The ship that Count Orlok came on had a bunch of rats, and it was like spreading plague or something all over their city, but it wasn't a regular plague, like it was killing people, but then the people that were on the boat didn't have any blood in them. So the doctor's like, hey, like, this ain't right. Something's going on. They leave her friend's house. Nosferatu visits the family again at night, kills them all except the dad. The dad is like, bro, what the F? Like, at the funeral, he's like, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault. They decide to come with a plan to kill Nosferatu, and the dad was supposed to help them, but I guess he was like so delirious and kind of drunk, and he also kind of sort of got the plague from the rats, I guess, that he went to the grave where his wife was buried. It was like a mausoleum or whatever, and he sleeps with her body because he misses her so much, I guess. So they have to come and like burn everything so that Dracula doesn't take over or something. I'm not sure why they had to burn all their bodies, but it was weird. So they come up with a plan to burn Nosferatu's grave, like the casket that he sleeps in, because I guess if there's no casket, then he can't go back at night. That was the plan that Thomas thought they were doing. But Ellen, our main girl, she knows what she has to do. So while her husband is trying to kill the casket, burn it, whatever, she calls on to Nosferatu at night, and he comes to her, and she says yes. And they sleep together, and it's really, really gross, and then he sucks all her blood. By the way, another visual for you, when he sucks blood, he goes like this with his back. Like, freaking like I don't even know what kind of animal would do that, but when he drinks like with his entire body, and it looks so freaking freaky, and he gulps it, and you can hear him going like, and it's just kind of like horror-y, you know? Like, you can really tell you're watching a horror movie in those moments. There was a prophecy where if a girl says yes and they stay together till the sun rise, then Nosferatu gets burned. He does get burned. He dies, like, by the sun or whatever. I don't know. He starts bleeding from his eyes. But our main girl dies, too, because he drank so much of her blood. And then Thomas comes back, and he's like, oh, no, Ellen. And then he cries, and it's really sad. In the movies that Ellen dies and Nosferatu dies, and poor Thomas just stays alone with a freaking plague in the city from the rats. Like, I don't even know. If I had to rate the movie, I'd probably rate it like a 7 out of 10. It was a little slow at times, but I feel like maybe it's just my, like, attention span from all the TikTok scrolling that I do, that I just can't focus for that long. I think the movie was almost 2 hours, but it definitely felt longer than that. I liked it. Would I watch it again? Probably not. It's very, like, artistic and gothic, and, like, it's giving very much like Crimson Peak vibes times 1,000, times art, times amazing filmography, cinematography, whatever. Like, every single shot was like, this is what we're gonna do. I also really like the creative decision of making the night black and white. So, like, everything at night turns black and white. I really like that. I also really liked how Nosferatu looked, because Count Dracula, he kind of revitalizes himself with the blood, but Nosferatu, he's rotting, like, through centuries. He just doesn't die, and he keeps drinking blood because he's this, like, monster. He also looked so gross. He had, like, a bunch of holes in his body, like, balding head, crazy forehead action, crazy mustache. His fingers looked insane. Nail goals, by the way, they were so long, and they looked so strong. But yeah, that's pretty much the movie. I just wanted to yap about a movie that I just watched. Subscribe if you want a video every 6 months, or don't. I don't really care, to be honest with you. I just post for myself at this point. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my yapping, and Merry Christmas, everybody.